Rangers fans are fed up with several of the veteran players, and today we are letting them have their say on a very special Mailbag edition.
You're Locked on the New York Rangers, your daily podcast on the New York Rangers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 1374 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube, and we are, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So, yeah, very special mailbag edition here. We're going to have a wide-ranging bunch of topics to discuss as we gear toward Ranger hockey. We actually do have Ranger hockey a little bit later this month. You know, we've got the rookie series coming up between the Rangers and Flyers, and then we've got a handful of preseason games at the end of the month as well. But for right now, we're going to go ahead, basically turn the show over to you guys. I'm going to read certain comments that I've gotten, you know, for this very special mailbag edition here. And one of the first things that we're going to do, or the first thing that we're going to do on today's episode, is we're going to basically read comments and acknowledge your complaints, your grievances that you have with certain Ranger players from what happened this past season. This is going to be hopefully the last time that we really kind of go off on what happened last season, because I am looking forward to this upcoming season. I think it can't possibly go as bad as the one before it. And I do want to turn the page and start being positive again. But you know what? We've been doing these best and worst case scenario episodes, and every time I do one, you know, people are still mad at Mika, people are still mad at Panarin, and I understand it. You know, more players than just those two, but you get the idea. The bottom line is we're going to let you guys air your grievances here one more time. We'll have some other topics today as well, and then we will eventually shift our attention to next season. Hopefully, we can be a little bit more positive around here. When I say that, I include myself in that as well. But we begin with Mika Zibanejad. I had a couple quick comments about him. This one comes to us from B.A. Wags. Mika can still play, but he can't carry play like he once did. He needs to be on a line with aggressive wingers. Talk about Mika regaining his role on the second line behind Miller. I say third line behind Miller and Trocheck. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good point there. I don't know that Mika is going to be like the guy that's really driving the play on his line. I would love to be wrong about that. But as far as being like the Robin to JT Miller's Batman, I don't know where I came up with that. I'm not even that big of a Batman fan. But I think that does kind of work, where he's kind of the complementary player to JT Miller. I think certainly that duo clicked last season once Miller came back to the Rangers in that trade. But you also bring up an interesting observation here, or I guess just basically a statement that kind of begs for a deeper analysis here. So right now, I think the prevailing belief, especially after the comments that were made by Mike Sullivan not too long ago, is that Mika will start this upcoming season on the wing with JT Miller. But if they don't do that, if they want Mika to remain a center, and if they want Mika to center his own line, then you do have Trocheck, JT Miller, Mika Zibanejad, who's sort of the odd man out there as far as the top six is concerned. I don't think it would be JT Miller. Again, this is the guy that you bring over to change the culture and get the Rangers to play a more physical, more aggressive, more straight line style of hockey. So I don't think you're going to have him on the third line, or at least not with any regularity. So it's basically Mika or Trocheck. I get the feeling they would probably have Trocheck on the third line, and Mika would still be a top sixer on the second line. See, and I don't like that because, again, I prefer Mika with JT Miller. And I also would like to leave the Trocheck, Lafreniere, Panarin line intact. You know, we'll see what the Rangers look to do. But if you drop Trocheck down to the third line, you're not going to be able to do that. And I don't really like Panarin and Mika on the same line. You know, for as many points as they've had and as many big moments as they both had as members of the Rangers, I never felt like they had like great chemistry together. So not really looking for that. I still like the idea, like I've said all along, of Mika staying on the wing with JT Miller. We got a comment here from Rich Ross, who says, Mika gave up on teammates and the fans last year. Don't want a player on my team who does not want to be here. I totally get what you're saying, man. And I can understand the frustration. I can understand the anger. And yeah, Mika was one of many players on this Ranger team last season that looked like they weren't given the old college try on a lot of different nights. There were nights that they did, but there were too many nights where Mika and this entire team just flat out no-showed. I am willing to wipe the slate clean. Maybe that's a generous offer on my part, but I'm looking forward to Ranger hockey, and I have to believe that, you know, at a certain point, like, isn't your pride on the line, whether you're Mika or any of these Ranger players that just didn't want to put forth a complete effort last season, isn't your pride on the line? Don't you want to go out there and get us to all shut up and show us what's up, win back the adulation of the fans, play hard for your coaches, play hard for the city, whatever it might be, whatever motivates you. Your family, I mean, your family's watching you too, right? Like I just feel like your pride is on the line at a certain point. I'm hoping that Mika and the rest of the Rangers, that's the case for them this season as well. Another comment from Big Red on Mika. Not washed yet, but closer to washed than elite. The Rangers are under no obligation to play him. I'm sure he'll get all the playing time he wants and then some, however. So, yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. I think Mika Zibanejad is closer to being washed than he is to being an elite player. I would love to be wrong about that. But when you look at, the last couple of seasons, really, and the lack of production 5v5 and just whatever the entire first half of last season was with Mika Zibanejad, it does not feel any longer that he's truly an elite player. And I don't know that he's going to get back to that level. At this point, if you give me a really good, really solid version of Mika Zibanejad, who maybe is boosted by playing with JT Miller, I'll sign up for that. As far as the playing time, I don't know. I feel like at the beginning of the season, playing time will sort of be Mika's to lose. I think Sullivan will have him in a pretty prominent role, certainly in the top 6 and most likely on the top power play as well. He'll be killing penalties like he usually does, I would assume. But I do think if he doesn't play, if he doesn't perform, I do think Sullivan will knock him down the lineup and might reduce his ice time at least a little bit, but we'll see. We got some comments on Alexis Lafreniere as well. We've got Agent Smith who says, make or break is a bit extreme. So he or she is referring to the thumbnail that I posted for the Lafreniere episode. It said make or break. We just needed basically, a snappy title to, catch people's attention there. But Agent Smith said, make or break is a bit extreme. He is still relatively young, barely even in prime, and on a long-term deal. Sure, with Kreider gone, he needs to pick it up. If he breaks 60 points, I think that would be a successful season. Yeah, I think 60 is acceptable for Lafreniere. I think you'll at least start feeling good about where he's at again, and at least, okay, this guy's a pretty productive player. I think that when you're drafted first overall and you're going into year 6, is it now with Lafreniere? Or is it year 5 maybe? I think it might be year 5. Would have to look that up. Now, hold on. Let's really think about this. So, I'm just going to look it up because that's going to drive me crazy if I don't find out about this. But the bottom line, yeah, he is still very young. He started in this league as obviously an 18-year-old. First overall pick, though, if you're going into year 6, which is what Alexis Lafreniere is about to do, I think you'd expect them to be probably more than a 60-point per game player, which is, a pretty high bar. But when you're first overall, those are the expectations that come with it. For full frame of reference, 2 years ago, Lafreniere was at 57 points, the best season of his career. So 60 would be a new career high. Yeah, I would probably sign up for that right now for Lafreniere for this upcoming season, especially if he's not on the top power play unit. Because obviously, if you're on the top power play, it lends itself to obviously more points. Another comment here on Lafreniere. This one comes to us from Brody. If Sullivan gives Laf a top spot on power play 1, I think his numbers 5v5 and confidence as well will make this his best season so far. Putting the past behind us because, yes, the Rangers haven't given him the minutes a number 1 overall player normally gets, but also he needs to show that hunger too. This season has to be better. Thank God no drama going into it, and we're going to get that new first-year coach bump that they seem to get. LGR. Yeah, you're correct. It's a unique situation with Lafreniere because when the Rangers took him number 1 overall, he wasn't really going to a terrible team. I've talked about this in the past, but, the Rangers at that time were certainly not a good team, but they also weren't like a bottom basement kind of team that usually ends up with the number 1 overall pick. And so if that's the case, if he's joining like just a god-awful team, a terrible team, a team that had one of the worst records in the league last year, then yeah, they're going to throw him right out there on the top line, the top power play, give him all these minutes. But with the Rangers, he didn't really have an open path to doing all those things. And so he didn't really get played like a number 1 overall pick would usually play in terms of ice time, spot in the lineup, and power play time. So that's all true too. As far as the first-year coach bump, let's keep our fingers crossed, man, that Lafreniere can benefit from that. He had a great season his first year with Laviolette. Hopefully we get more of the same with Sullivan. And then one more comment on Lafreniere here. This one comes to us from PFB. I think Lafreniere breaks out in 2026 when they put him on wing with Connor McDavid. Well, that's the dream right there. And, if McDavid was to become a Ranger, we did an entire episode on this. You can go back and check that out if you'd like. And maybe it's a topic we'll dive into in greater detail in a future episode. But if McDavid were to somehow end up a Ranger next season, and you think like, okay, well, who would his line mates be? Yeah, I think Lafreniere would definitely be one of them. I think there's a very good chance Will Cooley with McDavid. That could be the line right there. Go Cooley at left wing, go McDavid at center, go Lafreniere at right wing. And I know, there's a comment earlier, or there's another comment in the YouTube section about Lafreniere playing on his off wing, the right wing, but he had his best season ever there. So to me, that's not really too much of an issue with Lafreniere. I think he's shown that he can handle it, and it's not really any different than what we were getting when he was on the left wing. All right, a couple comments about Adam Fox. This one comes to us from Mikey. He gets injured way too often. The apologists all say it's due to the amount of games with all the playoff appearances, but it's way deeper than that. He was never the fastest guy to begin with, but with these re-aggravated knees, he's become even slower. He's become very easy to play against. There were many times this past season he played like someone's younger sibling. Players were holding him off with ease. Specifically, watch his effort from the game against the Sabres in Buffalo in late February from this past year. Tage Thompson hemmed him up and put him in his pocket. Wasn't due to a lack of effort. It was due to a lack of ability. All right, so a lot to unpack here. Let's start with that game against Buffalo. Yes, I do remember that play. I do remember the Rangers being particularly horrendous on that game. If I'm not mistaken, that was the first game after the Four Nations break, and you're thinking like, okay, they're all refreshed. They're coming back. It's time to kick some butt and work our way back into the playoffs. And they lost that game 8-2. And yes, Fox was terrible that night. And I do remember that play where Tage Thompson basically just owned him. I disagree, though, that Adam Fox has some kind of a lack of ability. I mean, he's a Norris winner. He's been a top 5 Norris finalist 4 years out of the last 5. He's somebody that has been very dynamic. He's been a workhorse for the New York Rangers. He's been an awesome quarterback of the power play. He's been a great penalty killer as well. He's somebody that makes things happen. He's basically the straw that stirs the drink when it comes to the New York Rangers, and especially as far as the blue line is concerned. As far as him being easy to play against, there's something to that. I wouldn't say easy, because I do think he tends to have good positioning. I do think maybe this past season notwithstanding that he's pretty good at defending the rush. And I feel like 2-on-1s, he was very good at defending 2-on-1s for a long time. He's got great hockey IQ, sees the ice very well. But I don't know that he's necessarily a player that, at least right now, strikes fear into the hearts of his opponents. So I don't know if that's what you mean by, as far as being easy to play against. He's not somebody that's go out there and rattle people with these devastating open ice hits. That's not him. That's not really his game. But as far as him getting injured too often, I mean, he had 2 injuries that I don't think anybody was getting up from. I mean, they were both knee on knee. The Sebastian Aho hit was one of them, and the other one happened in the playoffs against the Capitals in the first round 2 years ago, and he gutted it out and played through that. I mean, Adam Fox's games played from this past season through the most recent 4 seasons. We'll start with the most recent one. 74 games, 72 games, 82 games, 78 games. I mean, I don't know. That doesn't sound to me like somebody that's, having a bunch of injuries and missing a whole boatload of time. So I don't think injuries are too much of a concern. Hopefully, the knee injuries that he has had don't sap his mobility or anything like that. And we've got another Adam Fox comment that comes to us here from Mike. Getting knee checked by Aho seems to have affected his game. How could it not? Having a new line mate should help. Let's hope he bounces back. Expect to see a healthy Schneider get back to business. Yeah, I do think the Gavrikov pairing is going to work out pretty well. We've got an episode forthcoming on Gavrikov this upcoming week. And as far as him bouncing back, I mean, yeah, he does need to bounce back. We need to get him back to being, an elite level defenseman. That's the thing, though. Like, you say he has to bounce back. And I would agree, because based on what he's done in his career, this past season was a down season for Fox. But it's also the kind of season that 95% of the defensemen in this league would love to have, and when you think about it that way, it's like, was it really that bad? I mean, look, there's things he has to do better. I talked about his body language when we did our Adam Fox-centric episode, and how, it looks like he's always down in the dumps anytime the Rangers give up a goal. But I think there's more reasons for optimism than pessimism when it comes to Adam Fox this upcoming season. And then we have a comment here from Dion. NHL shows Adam Fox this. Okay, so this is in reference to me saying that Adam Fox was disrespected by NHL Network because they named him the number 16 defenseman in the NHL. So this is Dion's response to that. NHL shows Adam Fox the same respect he showed the Calgary Flames. Can't really argue with that one. You got a point there. Let's move on to Panarin. This one comes to us from Dave. He should have already been, so we're talking about the contract extension here. Dave says he should have already been extended. Panarin has been the best player on the team since he came to New York, and he's one of the best in the NHL. If Drury lets him go, it will be the worst of his many bad moves. I get where you're coming from, but I think it all depends on what else happens. Because if the Rangers were to get Connor McDavid next offseason, or even somebody like Kaprizov, maybe Eichel, maybe Kempe, these guys are all impending UFAs next season. If the Rangers let Panarin walk, but they pick up one of those guys, I think it'll be a little bit more forgivable. But if they don't get Panarin re-signed and they don't get any of those guys either, then that's obviously not going to be good. And that's certainly going to hurt the team. I don't think it would be Drury's worst move either. I think he's had worse. But to lose Panarin and also miss out on all the big UFAs next offseason, that would not be good. DJ says, talking about Panarin, he disappears in every big game, especially in the playoffs, and gave up on the team. Get him out of here. So I don't know that he gave up to the degree that other players in the Rangers did this past season. There were nights where it looked like he didn't really want to be there either. I think he's somebody that could have stepped up in a little bit more of a leadership role this past season and just didn't. Nobody on the Ranger team really did. As far as the playoffs, he doesn't disappear in the playoffs. The year against the Devils, where the Rangers lost in the first round, miserable playoff showing for Artemi Panarin in that 7-game miserable series. So I'll give you that one. Besides that, he doesn't give you as much as you would expect in the playoffs relative to what he does in the regular season. But I don't think it's like the complete car crash that a lot of people make it into. The last playoff run for the Rangers, he was pretty good. Now, and he switched up his style of play, too. He played a more physical, more gritty style during that playoff run. Now, he didn't do anything against the Panthers, but neither does anybody else. I'm not completely giving him a free pass for that, but the Panthers shut down everybody. That's just how it's been the past 3 seasons. So, yeah. Speaking of the Panthers, here's a comment from 10-11-9. Panarin signs a 2-year deal with Florida next summer for well below market value. Etch it in stone. That is, I think, probably the ultimate nightmare, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. So in just a second, going to keep everything rolling. I want to shift our attention to some of the Ranger prospects and some of your comments about how the Rangers should handle some of them and who's going to succeed next year and who's maybe a little bit overhyped. We'll get to all that good stuff in just a second. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a cannot-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. FanDuel is the best because however you bet, it's there for you. The option is there. You can bet on player props. You can build a same-game parlay, or you can even jump in live as the action is unfolding. It makes every game that much more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. It is quick, it is easy, and it is the best way to add a little more energy to Sundays. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Okay, let's talk some prospects. Big shout out to the Everydayers as always. Thank you guys so much for always supporting the podcast throughout the entire season, the entire offseason, and hopefully we get some postseason this year as well, but we will see. As far as your comments on the prospects, got a comment here from Jay, who's a big Dylan Robrick fan, as am I. Robrick should be a top 5 prospect on all prospects list, so I agree with you on that. Leading the Wolfpack in goals as a rookie is impressive, regardless if they're a low-scoring team or not. Berard should be the top prospect, in my opinion. My top 5 is Berard, Othmann, Perreault, Morrow, and Robrick. Robrick will be our third-line center to replace Brodzinski. Yeah, I think you're onto something there. As far as your top 5 goes, I put them in a little bit different of an order. I have Gabe Perreault at number 1. I think most people put him there, but that's also kind of the boring answer, right? You want to make like kind of a bold prediction, but I have no doubts that, this is genuinely your top 5, and huge Brett Berard fan as well. I like him at number 1 there. That's pretty cool. Robrick, though, yeah, I think eventually you will see him on the Rangers. He is somebody that they took late in the draft, I believe 6th round, if I'm not mistaken, and the early returns have been fantastic. He was really good last year for the Wolfpack. Possible we see him make his debut with the Rangers this season, even if it's for only a couple of games. But yeah, I think he's got top 9 upside. I think that's certainly possible. He can score goals, and he's got great size and is very physical as well. When I say he's got great size, he's basically the size of Adam Edstrom and Matt Rempe. He might be just a little bit shorter than Rempe, like an inch or two tops. But yeah, no, he's a giant. I mean, we're going to see Robrick at one point. And as far as him replacing Brodzinski on the third line, that would happen the season after this one, which is when Brodzinski will be a free agent. And I think you probably onto something there too. They might see him in that role. And I like Brodzinski and everything, but he's not somebody that I think they're going to bend over backwards to re-sign. And they probably do want to see what the prospect with, more upside can do at a certain point. And that might happen as soon as, not this season, but the one after. This one comes to us from Woodward. Adam Sikora, in my opinion, he's more NHL ready than any other, including Perreault. Sullivan will love his style of play. Bank it. Sikora is a weird one, and I've talked about this before on the podcast. He's in kind of a strange spot because former second-round pick, and yet we hear almost nothing from him. I think I talk about him more than anybody else. And usually when I talk about him, it's to do what I'm doing now. And that's to say that nobody ever talks about Adam Sikora. Sikora, again, for somebody that was a former second rounder, and as Ranger fans, we're so into the development of these young players and who's coming along and who's doing well with this team and who's doing well with the Wolfpack and all that good stuff. And when are they going to make their Ranger debut and who should they play with and all that. And there's nothing. Nobody ever mentions Sikora. So, I mean, we'll see. I mean, Sikora hasn't put up the flashiest of numbers with the Wolfpack. I think he's probably going to have to put in a little bit more time there before he's a serious consideration to be called up. But he's got at least one big fan in Woodward here. This one comes to us from Sean, talking about the prospects. Newsflash, they all stink. Not one of them will be a bona fide NHL star. Well, Sean, I hope you're wrong about that. Of course, with prospects, there's never any guarantee one way or another. But to write them all off this early, especially when we're talking about a lot of guys who haven't even made their NHL debut, a little bit premature for that as well. This one comes to us from Really. So far, Othmann and Perreault look like can't-miss prospects who go nowhere. I hope I'm wrong. Othmann, I can understand there being some concern there because the guy has played 25 NHL games. He's got 2 assists. He hasn't scored a goal yet. And part of that is due to, of course, time on the ice and, who he's playing with and whatnot. But, I can understand being a little bit wary about his very underwhelming start to his NHL career. If nothing else, he's very physical. He is a wrecking ball out there, and he'll hit anything that moves. So I can understand that a little bit. Perreault has played 5 games. He's played 5 NHL games. And think about the circumstances under which he debuted last season. The Rangers were a complete dumpster fire, a complete disaster, a complete disgrace last season. What, the 19-year-old is supposed to come in and immediately fix everything and just set the NHL on fire? Now, look, I mean, who's to say for sure what's going to happen with Perreault, right? I don't know for sure. Nobody knows for sure. Could he be somebody that underwhelms through his career? Sure. Anybody that's only played 5 NHL games, obviously their story is yet to be told. But I don't have any real reason to believe, based on the 5 games that he played last year, that that's going to be the case. I like Perreault starting this season in the AHL. I think that allows him to build his confidence, get used to pro hockey. And then when the Rangers have a role for him, you call him up and hopefully he's ready to rock. We will see. Something else going for Perreault right now, too. There was an interview that was posted on social media the other day with him. He looks noticeably bigger. It looks like he's been hitting the gym pretty hard this offseason. And obviously going from college to pro, that's something that you're going to have to do. And you're going to have to fill out a little bit if you want to be able to, hold your own with the adults as opposed to, the college kids. This one comes to us from Elliot. Berard is a player and a good skater. He needs to play with better players. Perreault is a kid that should be a very good player. Not sure he's physically ready yet. That actually goes back to what I was just talking about, interestingly. Othmann, sadly, has shown very little. He has cacoitis so far. Another invisible man. I hope this is his year, but don't have any reason to believe he will. So, yeah, you mentioned the big 3 there. Othmann, I am willing to give him this season before I hit any kind of a panic button because he's played very sporadically. His ice time has been limited. And I'm thinking that if he does make the Rangers out of training camp, that there will be a bigger role waiting for him this season than last season. At the very least, he should at least be on the 3rd line. Berard, man, I love everything about Berard. I mean, he is a little bit undersized, but he plays bigger than his frame. He'll get in your face. He's got a certain aggression, a certain feistiness to his game. He can shoot the puck. He's got good speed. I really like Berard. I think they got a good one there late in the 5th round in whatever year it was that he was drafted. We got a comment here from T-Bone. We got another Brett Berard fan. Call it a prediction or a gut feeling. I believe Brett Berard is going to surprise a lot of Rangers fans, especially the they're all bums types. Yeah, I mean, you gotta give them a little bit of a chance. And I understand we've been burned in the past and we've been underwhelmed by certain, 1st round picks. And I get it. We all have a little bit of PTSD from these, supposedly highly touted prospects and they don't do much or they do very little. So I get it, but at the same time, you got to give them more than like 5 games that Gabe Perreault got. And again, I do like Berard, so I agree with you there, T-Bone. We've got Joe here. The only one I believe is going to be a very good NHL player is Brett Berard. A lot of love for Berard, given the chance. Moreau will see. The rest, my opinion, Othmann, Perreault, didn't like their game at all, specifically Othmann. Again, give Perreault a chance. He has played 5 NHL games. 5 NHL games, has never made or broken anyone's career. Let's see how he does this season when he, at some point, maybe at the start of the season, maybe a little bit deeper into the season, but he'll eventually be on the Rangers. I do believe that. Omni says, I think Othmann will eventually be a scorer in the NHL, even though he has not scored a goal yet. His minors track record is good in this area, but why do the Rangers keep drafting guys under 6 feet tall? Look at the Panthers, except for Marchand. Yeah, I mean, Othmann, that's one thing you can say for him. This guy has been a goal scorer and a good one and an effective one and occasionally a dominant one everywhere he's been throughout his entire NHL career, or rather entire hockey career, with the one exception, of course, being the NHL. So we'll see. Hopefully that eventually translates to the show here. As far as the Rangers drafting guys under 6 feet tall, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think with somebody like Perreault, it got to a situation where he fell a lot farther than people thought that he would. And it got to a point where he was down to like whatever it was for the Rangers, like 22, 23, wherever they were picking that year. And I was like, all right, we got to pick this dude. Like, yes, he's not as big as some other players, but the skill is off the charts and he shouldn't be here, but he is here. So we're going to take him. But if you look at the Rangers, their draft class this year, you kind of got your wish. If you wanted bigger, taller players, almost all of them fit that description. They're not all giants, but I think the vast majority, I think there's only maybe one player who was under 6 feet tall for the Rangers this year in the draft. So if you want bigger players, I mean, you got your wish there. That's the direction that they certainly seem to go in this year's draft. So we're gonna keep everything rolling in just a second. We got a couple of comments from fans saying goodbye to Chris Kreider, some heartfelt comments and whatnot, and some final thoughts on Kreider's obviously very memorable tenure as a member of the New York Rangers. So we'll get to that and a couple of other announcements at the end of today's episode as well. We'll get to all that good stuff in just a second. All right, let's go ahead and wrap up today's episode with, again, a couple of comments on Chris Kreider. We've got one here from Mike. Watching the Rangers without Kreider is going to be surreal. I'll be watching Ducks games late at night, too. Mike, I wish I could stay up that late anymore, man. I just can't do it anymore. I used to watch, the West Coast games, the late night games like it was nothing. Now I dread whenever the Rangers go out there, and it's like, oh, God, we're going to be up all night watching this team. And it's one thing when they're good. 2 years ago, it was like, all right, I'll stay up. Let's rock and roll here, and let's get a win on the West Coast. This past season, it just felt like a chore. And I'm just being honest about that. It's rough staying up that late to watch a team that is struggling and not just struggling, but not even giving you an honest effort on a lot of nights. So that was rough. But yeah, I mean, as far as the Ducks go, I mean, that's the team I'm going to be pulling for in the Western Conference. They're a little bit of an underdog team. They've been down for a while. And you've got 4 former Rangers who mostly, and I stress mostly, were liked by the fan base when they were here. So I mean, I've got no other horse in that race as far as the Western Conference, so I will pull for the Ducks a little bit over there. As far as watching the Rangers without Kreider, yes, I do think that that it will be very surreal. I think that's a really good word for it. There's a lot of people that are Ranger fans, people that might be listening to this or watching this or whatever it might be, that do not know Ranger hockey without Chris Kreider being a part of it. Kreider was here for parts of 15 seasons, if we count, that playoff cameo that he had in his first season. So you've got that to consider. And on top of that, I mean, even people that have been Ranger fans for a long time. I was thinking about this the other day. I'm like 3 decades in at this point. The first year that I really watched them was 93, 94. Maybe that should have been the end. Maybe I should have just stopped right there. But no, I mean, the bottom line, that was obviously a great year to get into the Rangers. But it's been 30 years that I've been watching this team now. And Kreider's been here for half of it. I mean, that's pretty crazy to think about in and of itself. So, and it's different for everybody depending on how long you've been a Ranger fan. But yeah, again, there's a lot of people out there, a lot of fans, younger fans, or just newer hockey fans that don't know Ranger hockey without Kreider. So I think surreal is the perfect word to describe it. We got a comment here from PFB. Jury is making moves to contend this season and to save his own job. They missed the playoffs this year, and 3 coaches fail. Jury has to be on the chopping block. Jury is not looking long-term. Yeah, I mean, And this was a comment that was on the Kreider episode that I posted, or one of the Kreider episodes that we've done. I mean, yeah, I mean, look, with general managers in sports, I think probably just about everything they do has at least something of a selfish motive to it. If you start to sense that your job might be on the line, that the seat might be getting a little bit warm, you might be a little bit more bold, and you might look to do moves that don't necessarily serve the team in the long term. It's basically patchwork for the short term. You can even look at something like re-signing Igor Shesterkin, which I am in favor of. I do like the fact that the Rangers locked him up long-term and that he's going to be here. But, everybody looks at the 8 years, and understandably so. Drury's not worried about like the 6th and 7th and 8th years of Igor's contract, because if Drury is still here in 6 or 7 or 8 years, then that's probably a good problem to have. It would probably mean it'd be a good thing for us too, because it would probably mean that the Rangers have enjoyed at least a decent amount of success over the last handful of seasons. So I do 100% believe that Drury and other GMs do make moves like that, where they're trying to save their own skin. And if you feel that the Kreider trade was part of that, if you feel like other moves the Rangers made this offseason is part of that, the JT Miller acquisition, I get where you're coming from. I mean, if the Rangers go out there and they sputter and they struggle and they all look unmotivated, I'm not sure Drury survives that going into the following season. So I totally get the point that you're making there. This one comes to us from DD. I was never the biggest Kreids fan, as in I'd consider getting his sweater, but I was always a fan. He was a part of all our lives, and to those of us probably a bit too emotionally tied to this team, he gave some of the highest highs we've ever experienced as Ranger diehards. Good luck, Chris, and thank you. Yeah, I get that. I mean, I think a lot of fans of the Rangers kind of went hot and cold with Kreider over the years, because he is a player, and I've said as much on the podcast, he could drive you nuts at times. I mean, there's no denying that. But I think, the loyalty that he showed to this Ranger organization, that's something he does not get enough credit for. I think it's funny because, excuse me, as inconsistent as he can be, as up and down as he can be, as hot and cold as he can be, pretty much throughout his entire career, very streaky player. In a lot of ways, he was consistent despite being inconsistent, because at the end of the season, for the first decade of his career, his numbers were eerily similar from one season to the next. And they were never elite, but they were always rock solid. And okay, this is somebody that we throw into our top 6 and we don't worry about it. He goes out there and does his thing, and he's a steadily productive player. But then, he just exploded after he signed that contract extension. He had the year where he had 50 goals or however many it was. And obviously that was a phenomenal year. And yes, some of the moments that he had in the playoffs, I mean, scored some big goals for this team throughout the years. That Penguins series, a couple of big goals there a few years ago. And of course, the one that no one will ever forget is 2 years ago against the Canes, when he had the hat trick and knocked the Canes out of the playoffs and helped the Rangers advance. And actually, our next comment is about that very topic. This one comes to us from Hey. I just watched a recording of his 3-goal performance that knocked off the Canes 3 years ago. So sad he's playing for another team this year. So believe it or not, that was only 2 years ago. It feels like 10 years ago. Exaggerating a little bit to make the point here, but you get the idea. I mean, that just feels like it was a lifetime ago, man. Like so much has changed in such a short amount of time. But yeah, man, I don't think any of us who watched that game, who watched that performance, will ever forget it. And that's not an exaggeration. I mean, that is one of the greatest single game clutchest performances in New York Ranger history. And we can talk about some other ones. Certainly Messier, Game 6 against the Devils, guarantees the win, gets the natural hat trick. I think that's up there. Henrik Lundqvist, Game 7 against the Penguins in 2014. I would put that up there. I'm doing this off the top of my head here, so there's, I mean, those two for sure. I think goaltending performances, you could probably come up with at least half a dozen Henrik Lundqvist playoff performances. You could probably come up with a few for Igor as well. I think about some of those games against the Panthers where he was almost single-handedly keeping the Rangers in those games. Yeah, man. I mean, those are the big ones right there for sure. I think that Kreider performance is right up there with some of the all-time greats for the Rangers in the postseason. But I figure we'll call it there. A couple of quick announcements here before we wrap up. So first of all, this is the last episode, or excuse me, this is the last week of 3 episodes per week. Beginning this upcoming week, we're going to go back to 5 episodes. We got Ranger hockey coming up. Locked On is making the switch. All NHL Locked On podcasts. We'll go back to 5 episodes per week. So definitely looking forward to that. And it'll stay that way for approximately the next 10 and a half months or so. And that's what we do here, man. It's your team every day, episode 5 days a week, and definitely looking forward to getting back to that schedule. Also, Final reminder for fantasy hockey, if you did not play last year, you want to play this year, reach out and let me know. Beginning this upcoming week, we are going to open up the league for some new players. And finally, Stefan Matteau and Sam Rosen stories, send them my way, and we will potentially read them on a future episode of Locked On New York Rangers. But again, we'll call it there. If you guys would like to get in touch with this podcast, please send an email to lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Definitely give us a follow on Twitter @jchick17, and definitely subscribe to Locked On New York Rangers YouTube channel. Thanks again, guys, and we'll see you next time.